Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Living and Loving with yours truly, Monique McCall, country singer, songwriter, and recording artist. And I'm here today with a very special guest. You know, I'm from Palm Beach County. I live in West Palm Beach. That's the place my family and I call home. And today I have with me the former CEO of the Loggerhead Marine Life Center. He's now presently the CEO of the Palm Beach Symphony, a love of mine, beautiful classic music, but they've gone in other directions. So I'm really excited to hear about that today. And he has also been making so many waves out on the ocean, not only from the waves at the Loggerhead Marine Life Center and now to the beautiful sound waves of music at the Palm Beach Symphony, but he's making waves out on the ocean. He's going to share that story today. So please welcome David McClymont, the CEO of the Palm Beach Symphony, proud father of 4 children, and now a proud grandfather of 1 from Jupiter, Florida. Thank you so much for joining me, David. How are you? I know you're
terrific.
Loving.
Thank you very much for having me. This is exciting. And congratulations to you for all of your recent success too.
Thank you so much. I can only hope to have the success that you have been having now in music. So I wanted to start, with you having begun, at the Loggerhead Marine Life Center as CEO. I know you had so much before that, but I know that's when you and I were first introduced. And then somehow you went from the waves of the ocean to the sound waves of music and living and loving through all this. Tell me about that.
That's a perfect segue, and actually a very good analogy too. We had done some really exciting things at Loggerhead Marine Life Center, one of which was to go to the county and acquire 1.5 acres of land. And that was right about the same time that I'd met you. And we embarked on a very aggressive capital campaign, did some wonderful things, doubled the size of the organization in a very short period of time, over about 2.5 years. Just as we were hitting stride with expanding the mission at the Loggerhead Marine Life Center, I received a phone call from the board chairman at the Palm Beach Symphony saying, "We've seen a lot of what you've accomplished with your team at Loggerhead. Would you be interested in joining our team as the new CEO to help guide us in a new direction?" And at that time, the Symphony had celebrated its 40th anniversary. Sadly, because of some tough economic times in 2008, 2009, 2010, around there, they were operating in the red. So the year prior to my arrival, they had lost $175,000 on a $700,000 budget. They did not have a budget, which is not uncommon in the nonprofit world. And they had 1 year of survival when we did forward cash flow projections. So fast forward to today, which is about 7.5 years later, we're at $3 million budget. And we've put close to $2 million back into an account that only had 100,000 when I started. So it's been a great journey. But as you might imagine, we couldn't have done it without an amazing board, a great group of very loyal major supporters, an engaged community, and a team of individuals that I'm so blessed to work with every single day.
Yeah, but I know from what I've seen you do at the Loggerhead Marine Life Center and now with the Palm Beach Symphony, much and a lot of credit does go to you. I know you have a fantastic team, but that also takes a lot on your, from your leadership perspective to put that kind of team together and to drive that team and create such a great culture. So what do you attribute your success to? I mean, because you are probably one of the most phenomenal leaders in our community.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes.
I think there's a couple driving forces, Monique, that go behind it. One is what you just touched upon. I'm a huge believer and a very big student of culture. And that was something when I learned when I worked at Bear Lakes Country Club for 15 years. So I had the great fortune of working in a private hospitality environment, a private country club, 2 signature Jack Nicklaus golf courses. And you quickly learned when you had 1,000 members, you have to have culture to survive. And more importantly, if you want to separate yourself from the competition, you have to have strong culture. So for the past 20 years, I've been a student of culture. When I arrived at Loggerhead, that was one of the first things I looked at. One, do we have the right people on the bus? If you've ever read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about one of the most important things in business is to get all the right people on the bus, but then most importantly, to make sure that the right people that are on the bus are seated in the right seats. So at Loggerhead, we made sure that we got the right people on the bus. And then when we got the right people on the bus, we invited them, because I'm also a big believer that the triangle in management is actually inverted. Most people that think that the triangle is, your traditional hierarchy at the top is the CEO, all of the decisions drive down from the top. I believe that it's actually inverted. It's turned upside down, where you invite your team members to participate in creating the culture and creating the processes. So one of the things that we did at Loggerhead very successfully was we put together what I call a one-page strategic plan. That included a mission, a vision, core values, cultural behaviors, and strategies. And those can be transferable to any company. So that was why I believe that we were able to go from Loggerhead, where, as you said, we were protecting the beaches and the turtles and educating 35,000 students per year, to transfer that over to the Palm Beach Symphony, because it's very transferable. So we began to institute the culture for the Palm Beach Symphony, which included the mission, the vision, the core values, cultural behaviors, and the strategies. Then we made sure that we had the right people on the bus. Once you did that, then you can go to the third component, which is visioning. And the visioning is critical. And I always use the analogy, it's like getting onto a sailboat or a yacht. And everybody says, we want to go to a certain destination. We want to go to Spain. Let's go to Spain, right? Well, if you want to go to Spain, you have to make sure that you get the right people on the boat, because you're going to encounter some challenging waters, maybe some hurricanes, some tropical storms. Some tough winds. And you want to have the right people on the boat with you. But then more importantly, you have to have a navigational map. You can't just disembark from the dock in Palm Beach, go out the Palm Beach Inlet, and start sailing blindly. You have to have a navigational map. So one of the things that we did as a team was we sat down and mobilized and really began to visualize. What are the steps that we need to take to get out of the storm? Because the first 2 years were really challenging. We just wanted to survive. We weren't even thinking. It was basically like the boat was taking in water. We just had to survive, get the water out of the boat. After we stabilized the boat, then we said, okay, collectively as a team, how do we now chart a course to get to Spain? So visioning, culture, and making sure you have what I call the human assets, which are the most important assets that are never on a balance sheet. You don't see those on a balance sheet, but they're the most important. It's the people that you surround yourself with.
And that's just true throughout life, not only in business, but that is just true across the board.
It absolutely is. I'm a big believer in that. You and I have talked about that before. I think that you can actually be analyzed or determined by the 5 or 6 people that you surround yourself with. And there are many studies on that. There have been many professional development books written on it, but it really is true. If you look around at the 5 or 6 people within your degree 1, as I call it, 6 degrees of separation, degree 1, that can really determine a lot in your life. So you do have to surround yourself, not only in business, with people that are going to take you to higher ground, but also personally too, to make sure that you're careful about who you surround yourself with.
Definitely, it can change who you are and where you're headed. I had a mentor that I worked with when I was really, really young, even though I'm still really, really young.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are still young. What was that, yesterday?
But she created an analogy for me that was fantastic. She said, Monique, you're an artist. Put yourself on the stage. Who are you going to let backstage with you? Who's going to be in the front row, and who's not even going to make it into the theater?
I love that analogy. I haven't heard that before, but that's very applicable to our industry too. And it's so true. It's so true. Like, who do you want to come backstage?
You can share that with your music students.
Absolutely. We will. Thank you for that.
Pick the right people and love the ones you're with.
So true.
Really, really important. And I know you do love the ones you're with, and you love all of the things that I know that you're doing. You're so adventuresome. You are an avid surfer. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that has played a big role in your success and what you have done business-wise.
Good question. I grew up playing baseball, and my dad was a very accomplished athlete. He played junior A hockey for the Montreal Canadiens. He was an accomplished baseball player. So he always wanted to see me become, an ascending baseball player. At about 12 or 13, I started surfing. And by the time I was about 14, I really started to take surfing serious. I got a little bit away from the baseball and started competing. For about 6 years, from the time I was 14 until I was about 20, I was sponsored by all the big brands you could think of, Billabong, sunglass companies, surfboard companies. Matt Keckley, who was actually Kelly Slater's mentor, was my surfboard manufacturer.
Wow.
And I just fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with being able to compete at that level. I really enjoyed the mindset that it took to go out into these 20-minute heats and have to give everything you had within those 20 minutes, but be very strategic. I also think, reflecting back on it, it helped me become the business person I am today. Because you go out into the ocean's not perfect, especially competing in Florida. we don't have the most desirable waves if you compare us to different places throughout the world. So you go out into this 20-minute heat with unfavorable conditions, and one, you have to make a masterpiece of those unfavorable conditions, and two, you have to be extremely strategic. So you have to spend time before you go out into the heat to time the periods of the waves that are coming in, to see where there might be rips, to see where the most favorable conditions are. You have to scout the people that you're competing against. So that really, I feel, launched me to become driven. And then when I was about 2021, I got into the investment banking business, worked for UBS for a couple of years in Fort Lauderdale before I worked at Bear Lakes Country Club. But the surfing really taught me what it was like to be driven, hardworking, competitive, ethical, because I was representing brands as a very young person. So at the time, Billabong was a really big brand. I had to be careful about what I did. I was an extension of that brand, very much like you are in business. So here we are, fast forward all these years later. I'm still just a kid at heart when it comes to surfing. I love to surf all over the world. I've been to Bali 3 times. I've been to the Maldives, all over Central America. I actually just got back yesterday from El Salvador. So it's still a big passion of mine.
I've been jealously watching you on all your social platforms. You're just crushing it out there on the ocean, and you are crushing it business-wise. And I would love to know more than ever how, you were able to, begin investment banking. You end up in not-for-profits, and you had been, out on the ocean, sort of this rough and tumble type of guy. And then you end up in classical music. I mean, worlds apart. Really, I know how you got there physically, but mentally, I mean, what were the changes for you?
That's a really good question. I think if I was to reflect back, Monique, and look back on it, there are a couple driving forces. One is work ethic. You cannot substitute above average work ethic. And if there was one thing I learned, is that you have to outwork everybody around you, but to do so in an ethical manner. So it's not like you're trying to undermine somebody or climb on top of them. You just have to simply outwork them. That's one. Two, I was lucky. I was fortunate. I was lucky. I think because I had an intense work ethic and I was always willing to go above and beyond anything everybody asked me. And then two, because of that, I had an insatiable appetite to learn. So as a result of those two driving forces, I had great mentors. And the mentors saw that. They said, wow, he is really willing to work. I can tell you, when I first started working in the investment banking business, I worked with some brilliant people that were only 3 or 4 years older than me at the time that decided, this is well before institutional investing, that they wanted to go divide up Europe. So at 21 years old, I was calling countries in Europe asking if I could speak with their security analysts. And I was speaking their language, Tele de Engelsk, when we would call Denmark. And we would go in at 3 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't leave until 6 o'clock at night. So it was work ethic. But then as a result of that, some of these people took me under the wing and they taught me the business. And then the same thing held true when I went to Bear Lakes. When I went to Bear Lakes, I basically went there to take a year off to play golf. I was playing a lot of golf at the time. And I worked really hard. And some people noticed it. And then 15 years later, here I am, assistant general manager, saying, how did I get here? What's going on? So I do think it's having a really good work ethic. And you can't underestimate that enough. Two, being willing to learn. Just listen. When I started at Bear Lakes, from the time 1995 until 2000, I worked in the golf department because the team and I did some really exciting stuff. My general manager at the time, Kevin Murphy, who was one of my mentors, decided, hey, we're going to let you go ahead and work upstairs in the clubhouse. I had zero experience. And I even said that to Kevin. I said, Kevin, this might be a really bad idea. He said, why is that? I said, I have no experience. He said, you don't need experience. You need your work ethic. So I dove in for 6 months. I picked up every single book I could pick up on food and beverage and catering and managing events. And I dove in head first. Same thing happened when I went to Loggerhead. I wasn't a marine biologist. I had so much to learn about the technical aspects. I knew how to grow a business. But you have to understand the product and service that you're working with. Same thing now at the Symphony. I started at the Symphony in 2014. I'm not a classically trained musician. I appreciate the art form, but I had to dive in for 6 to 8 months, and I'm still continuing to learn. Having people like Jerry Schwartz be my mentor and ask him his side of the artistic excellence. So yeah, it's work ethic, it's learning, it's listening, and it's trying to go above and beyond.
It's probably a lot of curiosity too. You have
it is. I agree with that.
Insatiable curiosity to learn.
Definitely. Very true.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic answer. So you mentioned Gerard Schwartz. You have one of the most phenomenal musical directors at the Palm Beach Symphony. I know that he has won, 6 Emmys. He's been nominated for 14 Grammys. And now, did he join the symphony under your leadership?
Mm-hmm.
He did. And how did you make that selection?
A little bit of serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of relationship, right? I think that we're all in the relationship business, both personally and professionally. And our success, both personally and professionally, is determined based on the relationships that we have. So I had been speaking with him very casually for a couple of years prior. As it turned out, our conductor and music director at the time, Ramon Tabar, who had really taken us to a whole nother level, it was a big part of what I call our staircase, was given an opportunity that one could not turn down. 2 weeks prior to our season-ending concert at the Kravis Center, we get a phone call from Ramon, and he says, I have been invited to conduct the Vienna Opera. And I said, okay, that's good. And he said, no, it's not. And I said, why is it not good? He said, the date is the same as our season-ending concert. Oh. So he said, is there any way I can get out of our contract? He said, if you don't want me to, I will come and I will conduct the last concert at the Kravis Center. At that time, his success and his availability for our small organization was becoming more and more disconnected because he was really starting to ride a wave of success. So, of course, what are we going to say to this young, aspiring Spanish conductor who's just been given the opportunity to conduct an opera? Good luck, right? But then that put us in a really challenging position where 2 weeks prior to our season-ending concert, where we had very high attendance, who's conducting? Do I call Monique? I know I'm not conducting.
Don't call me.
Right. I'm not conducting. So I had reached out to Jerry at the time. I said, by any chance, will you be in town on April, whatever it was, 12th or 19th? He said, let me look at my calendar. I'll get back to you tomorrow. He gets back to me and he says, I'm available. I said, wow, okay. Would you be interested in conducting the symphony for our season-ending concert? I told him the whole situation. He said, yes. Little did I know at the time, he was in the final stages of interviewing for the director of orchestral music at the University of Miami. And he wasn't able to tell me that. So he comes and conducts. The musicians love him. He does an unbelievable job. Music quality increases. People really appreciated it that attended the concert. And then the news comes out that he's now director of orchestral music at the University of Miami. So I then said, would you be interested in maybe conducting more than once? And he said, what do you have in mind? And I said, what if things worked out, we could have you become our new music director? He said, I would be thrilled. And now sort of the rest is history. So he's been with us going on 2.5 years. You're absolutely right. He spent 30 years in Seattle, helped grow Seattle, helped build Benaroa Hall. He was principal trumpet in the New York Phil under Leonard Bernstein. A lot of people don't know that.
I read that.
Brilliant musician. And yeah, 14 Emmys, a bunch of different awards. Was in New York. He's right now actually in North Carolina with the Eastern Music Festival, where he conducts that. So if you go back to the original question, how have you been able to ascend to all the success? It goes back to that good to great. You have to get all the right people on the bus. He's taken us to an entirely new level with artistic excellence. And I always share this story. One of the first concerts that he conducted, I walked into a rehearsal at the Kravis Center. There sat 75 musicians. It was for Beethoven 9. 120 singers. And he starts off the rehearsal and he says, no, do it again. It needs to go ba-ba-bow. They do it again. No, it needs to go ba-ba-bow. So for 15 minutes with people on eggshells, he's going through this repetition of getting the string section to do what he wanted them to do in his mind. But he did it in such a beautiful, motivating, yet very demanding way. And to me, that was a defining moment as to what our future held in store, because here was somebody that really knew music, but he knew leadership. And he knew how to get 75 musicians of different backgrounds, different levels to orchestrate, to all play at once. And then after the 15 minutes of the string section, almost getting to that point, and we know this as parents, right? You can have a child get to the point where they're almost at the point of breaking. It's the point, the brink. And you push them hard enough and they can actually break through that level where they maybe didn't think they could do it. In their minds at that time, Monique, they didn't think they could do it. They felt that he was asking something of them that was not within their ability. but yet it was. Because after 15 minutes, they finally did it. And he said, bravo, amazing. He made all 75 musicians stand up and applaud the strings section. So he's been amazing. He knows, obviously, all of the biggest guest artists. He picks up the phone and calls them. He's performed with them in the past. So he has elevated not only the music quality with the same musicians that we had mostly before, he's brought in some of the most world-renowned guest artists, and he's put together programming that's second to none. So we're blessed to have him.
So all the stars aligned. And do you feel that if you just continue to do the work and you continue to follow the magic and follow the light and just keep, take the good of what's happened and leave the rest, like what had happened with you losing your conductor and then, miraculously finding him and then everything fell into line? Do you feel that if you just keep focusing on the good, what is supposed to happen will happen? And it's always just as good as what you had or not better?
I'm a big believer in that. So I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in positivity. I believe in, obviously, positive actions yield positive outcomes. And you're absolutely right. I do think that if you narrow your scope of, one of the mentors I worked with that was a member at Bear Lakes always used to say to me, David, manage your life on two principles: critical few, trivial many. Mm-hmm. And your ability to distinguish the two will determine your success personally and professionally. I never forgot that. So to your point, yeah, as long as you keep your focus on the critical few and try to not get distracted with the trivial many, the ones that come in and it seems like these fires that you have to put out, absolutely. We just concluded our annual staff retreat and we looked at the metrics. I'm very data driven. I believe that data drives decisions. So we looked at the data and we said, okay, what were the things that we accomplished this past season from a metric standpoint that were amazing that we'd like to sustain? What are the things that we didn't hit the marks and how do we hit it next year? So if you really just break down the metrics into what they call KPIs, key performance indicators, it becomes, I don't want to say easy, but at least it's more manageable because you're focusing on the right things. So if you look at the three pillars of our mission, it's to engage, educate, and entertain. Our education, we reach about 50,000 kids during the past 2 or 3 years. How do we sustain that? We gave away 65 instruments this past year in the middle of COVID, valued at $100,000.
Thank you.
We make that 65 instruments, 85 instruments, right? So you just look at those metrics within the organization. It doesn't matter what organization it is. And maybe this is why we've been successful transferring from different industries. Because if you look at those metrics and then collectively as a team, figure out how you row in the boat with the same synchronicity and the same velocity to get to those goals, then you're going to be successful.
So there's one piece in there, because I love that you are so data driven, but there's another driver, and it's not a golf driver because I know you're a good golfer, but it's the heart piece, the heart driver. Where do you come from in the heart? How much is heart driven in those decisions as well? Because the data is the data. And you can see that, but you can't see the heart piece.
That's an excellent question. And a lot of times I'll have these intellectual, philosophical discussions about what drives success, right? Whether it be a professional baseball player, whether it be a musician like yourself, doesn't matter who it is. It's just somebody that's striving for excellence. And there are studies out there like Malcolm Gladwell with the 10,000 hour rule that's in either Tipping Point or Outliers. I forget which one. But you're absolutely right. You can't teach passion, or at least I haven't figured out how. I think that you're either just born with it or you have to find something that allows the pores within your body to open with that passion. I'm pretty blessed that once I get behind something, once I'm really passionate about something, then I will work till the end of time to achieve that goal. But it's a great question. I don't, I haven't learned how to teach passion. And I've always said that when I hire individuals, that's one of the first things I look for when we hire team members, is to see whether or not they have passion. And yes, I'm extremely passionate. I mean, obviously, it gives me great pride to say that in the middle of COVID, we gave away 65 instruments to Palm Beach County students that otherwise would not have had an instrument. And then you see those stories. What happens for me personally and our team is we see what happens with the lives of those students.
It can change their lives.
It changes. It does. And we don't think that would change their life, but it does. So it becomes this beautiful vicious cycle where the more instruments we give away, the more passionate we become. the more excited we are to try to raise more money so we can then give away more instruments.
So there is a big love piece that goes into all of this, which is absolutely beautiful. And that's why I'm here today doing what I'm doing and sharing the message of living and loving and how important that is across the board throughout life, no matter what it is that you're doing.
It's so true. You know, they talk about the Oprah model. The Oprah model is find your passion, figure out a way to get paid, and you never work another day in your life. And there's a lot of truth to that.
There's so much truth to that. And I know you're a passionate guy, so I'm going to embarrass you for a moment because I did learn an interesting statistic about you. One of your favorite films is The Notebook.
Guilty as accused.
And I also found out that you are a very good cook and you have a very sugary, sweet, interesting cinnamon pear. What is this dessert that you make? And I'm looking forward to maybe, a wonderful pear cinnamon dessert and a visit to the Palm Beach Symphony this year. I know you have a great lineup coming up. So tell me about that. Who do we have coming up performing? I know we have something in November. I think you have a fantastic clarinet player as well coming in to do a performance. And I'm looking forward to that because I gave a whirl to the clarinet when I was really young, was not very good at it, but I'm very fond of the woodwinds.
Oh, good. So yeah, we have a banner lineup. And again, we have to thank Jerry for that. Our season kicks off November the 7th. We have Helene Grimaud. And then we close out the season in April with Midori on violin. And then just brilliant artists in between. You can go to the website at palmbeachsymphony.org for the entire lineup, but banner season.
Well, I'm looking forward to the season, and I'm looking forward to hear some country music in there. Do you have any plans for mixing symphony with country music?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because you and I have had some discussions about that. Obviously, we want to continue to be innovative. That's one of our core values, is to make sure that we're continuously innovating. And I would love to speak with you about doing a crossover event. We have to make that happen.
Absolutely. Let's definitely make that happen. So thank you for joining me today, David. I know you're super busy. I do have one question that I ask all of my guests before they go. It's not an easy one, but it's a really great one. As a country music singer-songwriter, I always like to know, what is the one song that speaks to your heart and sums up the essence of your being?
One of them, I think, would be Fragile by Sting.
Fragile by Sting, coming from the CEO of the Palm Beach Symphony. All right, you going to sing a little for us?
No, you'll have people drop off the podcast if I start singing.
Come on, just one line. All right, tell us some of the words at least.
It just basically talks about how fragile we are and to look around and to appreciate everything that we have in life and to appreciate Earth and us as human beings. It's a beautiful song.
Well, I'm going to have to go make sure I go back and take a listen to that one because it's been a long time. So thank you so much for joining me today, David. I really appreciate it. You have been a longtime friend, fantastic leader in our community, former CEO of the Loggerhead Marine Life Center, the CEO of the Palm Beach Symphony now. His leadership is fantastic. From the words of David McClymont, make sure you pick who is on the bus with you. Flip that triangle over. Have a great work ethic. And you know what? Success will follow. Lead with your heart. And get out and make some waves on behalf of David today. Get out, live and love. My name is Monique McCall. Thank you so much for joining me here on Living and Loving. I'm here every Thursday at 4 p.m. on all of my social media platforms. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Love you all.
You take me there, somewhere I've never been before, like a storybook fairy tale about a girl who was rescued by her knight, who saved her from herself, put her before